Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Heroes Invincible. Me, the great wizard of the undead. Li Feng traveled into a world similar to invincible heroes. Although they have the golden fingers that every traveler has, they dare not use them. Show me. The whole world is full of believers of light, but I hold the main city of the cemetery. If I accidentally become a public enemy of the world. Li Feng roared reluctantly. Life is impermanent, filled with chaos, filth, and pain. Death means tranquility, order, and eternal beauty. Whenever someone accuses Li Feng of being synonymous with evil, he says. Then wave your hand and let the endless sea of skeletons engulf the enemy. This is a story of a necromancer fighting back against this world. It's not me who's wrong, it's this world. This book is based on Heroes of Might and Magic 5 and aims to cultivate the protagonist into the ultimate boss, the enemy of the novel's plane. Li Feng, Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Traveling to the Invincible World of Heroes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It seems like we have indeed traveled through time. Li Feng casually pulled and tugged at the torn cloth strip wrapped around his body, barely covering it, and finally accepted this reality. Although it took almost half a month to accept this fact, I still accepted it, didn't I? Li, it's time to go on the street. A man who was also dressed in rags, covered in dirt, and couldn't tell his age shouted at Li Feng not far away. Oh, come now. Li Feng heard the shout and immediately set aside his thoughts, picked up the bowl next to him, stood up, and walked quickly towards the man. The so-called going on the street is going to beg. Although he traveled through time, Li Feng did not become a nobleman or a relative of the imperial family, but rather a beggar. Being alone in a foreign land, besides having no problem communicating with these indigenous people, I can only speak but not write. In addition, as a college student with weak literary skills, I don't want to work as a porter. He went to see those porters, each with a tiger's back and a bear's waist. They had to carry 5 or 6 burlap bags of goods at the lowest standard, which was completely beyond his ability. In the first few days of traveling, I encountered obstacles everywhere, and in the end, I could only do the promising job of being a beggar. However, after being a beggar for almost half a month, Li Feng truly understood that every profession is not easy. Even the begging profession has a lot of knowledge. Where is it easier to beg, who can beg, which people have a higher success rate in begging, which store owners are better, and can get some leftovers. These may seem simple, but they are really eye-catching. On Li Feng's first day as a beggar, he saw a colleague begging from someone who shouldn't have begged because he had misjudged him, and was beaten to death on the spot. Brains splattered and blood overflowed. This bloody case happened right in front of Li Feng, allowing him to let go of his intellectual airs and clearly understand what kind of world he is currently in. Uncle Mori, where are we going today? Li Yun asked the man with some respect. Uncle Mori is a senior professional who, according to his own introduction, has been wandering the streets since the age of 8. For this city, it can be said that it is very secluded, and over the years, it has gathered more than 10 people, forming an organized and planned begging team. Li Feng is now making a living under the leadership of this beggar's sect leader, and because he is quite talkative, he is pleasing to others. So now I also have a position in the gang where I can say hi or low. The bunch of brats from Tonlu Street have crossed the border these days and come to our side. Go warn them first, or else we'll take Tonlu Street down by the way. Mori frowned and said. As soon as these words were spoken, the other beggars around were excited and put down their harsh words. One person here said that one person can defeat 2 people on the opposite side, while the other immediately claimed that he could defeat 5. Although these gang members were covered in dirt and clothes, their divine colors and words seemed like a mighty general wielding their might. Even Li Feng, who had received higher education, kept speaking boldly and looked like a dog's leg. Li Feng knew that all of his words were nonsense, but he had to bow his head under the eaves. People need to live first before they can talk about dignity. Mori nodded in satisfaction as he saw the excitement in the crowd around him, and then turned around like a gangster, waving his hand and saying, "Let's go and see those kids who will explore the street." Others quickly carried broken bowls, and the rotten pole followed behind in a noisy manner. But after only a few steps, it stopped. Two men wearing linen clothes were standing outside the dark and dirty alley, both tall and robust in stature. Looking at the bulging biceps, it feels scary. "Big brothers, it's so early today." Uncle Mori, who was originally full of authority, suddenly bent down and said attentively to the two people. "Today is the day for payment." The two of them frowned and took a step back, saying in disgust. Obviously unable to tolerate the foul smell on Mori's body. "Oh, I'm so sorry to have the two big brothers come over. I'm planning to deliver them later," Mori said politely, then took out a small bag from his pocket and respectfully delivered it with both hands. Although the bag containing money looked dirty, neither of them disliked it and grabbed it as soon as they reached out. She jolted casually, then turned around and left. Li Feng squatted on the side, admiring the other party's imposing presence. These two people are the thugs of the Jack gang, which manages this area. The shops on the street have to pay them monthly protection fees. Even these beggars are the same, and they may even suffer even more. If we can't pay the bill, ordinary citizens will at least bow before the enemy. But these beggars just hit the ground directly, but they won't kill them. Killing someone without breaking the law is a privilege of the nobility. If someone were to be killed, it would be troublesome for the Jack gang. But whether you can survive with injuries after being beaten is just a matter of two words. Surviving it is luck, but we can only strive to have a good baby in the next life. In other words, beggars have a higher status than slaves. It is precisely because of this payment that Mori is very sensitive to exploring the boundaries of the street. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. Protection fees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the two thugs from Jack's gang left, Mori regained his previous demeanor. He spoke some encouraging words to his subordinates and then led the team off. Li Feng's usual activity range is the three nearby streets, which are relatively good in terms of fuel and water, and belong to the type where there is less than enough compared to the lower. However, once the monthly protection fee is paid, it is 90% of the monthly income. Only with this 90% can they ensure that they can beg here. However, it is said that the gang in charge of managing this area once asked Mori to pay twice as much, but later because Mori had some friendship with someone from Jack's gang, it eventually became 90% of what it is now. Although it looked like the draw was quite fierce, we could still get some food on a regular basis, at least we wouldn't starve to death. Compared to some neighborhoods, it's already much better, so everyone gritted their teeth and persevered. It has to be said that although Li Feng initially wondered why he was so bullied but refused to resist. But after wandering in the circle for a long time, I also noticed that when it comes to becoming a beggar, besides being useless, there are also useless people, including Li Feng himself. Another reason is that the strength of the gang is indeed countless times stronger than that of the beggar sect. Not to mention the number of thugs, but it's still easy to get rid of these 10 or so people. Not to mention that Mori mentioned that there are also experts in the Jack gang. Li Feng doesn't know how tall the master is, as long as he knows he can't be provoked. This is a medieval Western world, where magic and swords also exist. Although Li Feng is a traveler, he naturally has some inherent abilities, but using that thing is similar to suicide in his eyes, so he would rather be low-key and more stable. Be a beggar, at least you can live. Waiting for the opportunity to change to a better environment in the future, beggars are just a temporary helplessness. While Li Feng was daydreaming, Mori had already led a large army to explore the street. Actually, it's not far either. It's just 2 blocks away, and the beggars there are also managed by the Jack gang. Mori seemed to be about to level and explore the beggars' sect on the street, but in reality, he was just asking for an explanation. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility of getting beaten up, but in the end, he still had to go to the Jack gang for arbitration. As soon as I walked into the corner of the exploring street, I saw a group of about 20 people, ragged beggars gathered together waiting for Mori and the others. Obviously, I had already heard the news and was ready. Well, how did your people get to my end? As soon as a group of people stood up, Mori angrily asked the skinny man standing in front of him. Just in time, I'll make it clear to you today. From now on, Panda Street will be mine, Shui Jing said firmly to Mori with a stern glare. Panda Street is one of the 3 streets where Mori and his gang are located. A beggar is just a beggar, uneducated, and without too many twists and turns. They just say they will do it. Upon hearing the words from the well, Mori shouted angrily and rushed up, followed by 5 more people rushing out. The rest hid behind, waving flags and shouting. As mentioned earlier, those who can become beggars in this world are basically useless people. Although it may seem like more than 10 people are quite similar, most of them are timid like mice, with those who bully the soft and fear the hard being the majority. So only 5 people were willing to follow Mori, including Li Feng. Although he has become a beggar, Li Feng is not just a useless scumbag. He knows very well that in order to obtain a good position in the gang, at least his attitude must be good. But whether he will actually do it or just be fishing on the side will be another matter. Seeing Mori take action, the well didn't talk anymore and rushed straight out, with 6 or 7 subordinates following behind him. When it comes to fighting between the beggars' sect, Li Feng is not unfamiliar, and he has fought twice since crossing over. The 2 groups of people collided with each other in just a few breaths, and Li Feng had already aimed at a small guy who looked thin and didn't look much on the ground. A person who knows how to pick a soft persimmon and pinch it. Ah! Ah! Drink! Drink! Li Feng shouted loudly to cheer himself up, and when he swung his Wang Ba Quan, it was a flurry of punches. With only about 10 punches, the little man was knocked to the ground, covering his face and howling in agony. But upon closer inspection, one could notice that the little man's gaze was flickering, carefully paying attention to the surroundings. It was obvious that he was lying on the ground pretending to be injured while fishing. Just solved the problem with the small stature, Li Feng was brought up by others before he could find anyone else. At first glance at that guy, Li Feng knew he was going to suffer. The other person is 1 head taller than him and looks quite sturdy. But then he felt relieved. The goods were blinking at him, causing his eyes to turn pale. Li Feng, who had been in battle for a long time, knew what the opponent meant, so he shouted again and charged forward, raising his fist but lightly landing on the opponent. The other party also lightly punched Li Feng in the stomach. The 2 of them started to fish with each punch. Looking around, almost everyone looked like this, except for Mori and Shui Jing. These 2 gang leaders are really fighting each other hard. You come and go, and in no time, they have already seen blood. Although the scene was quite bloody, it seemed that Mori had the advantage. After a few more rounds, Shui Jing's footsteps were already light and even standing was difficult. Just as Mori was preparing to pursue the victory, a fist suddenly burst out from the diagonal thrust and hit Mori directly in the face. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Conflict. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Eagle Territory was a bustling coastal city in the heroic empire, serving as an important transportation hub for the empire's maritime trade. The daily volume of ships carrying goods was extremely large, which also contributed to the prosperity of the Eagle Territory. After a place prospers, there will inevitably be a wealth gap. There are aristocratic merchants who spend a lot of money, and naturally there are beggars who wander on the streets and cannot eat their fill. In the Eagle territory, fights between beggars over territory also occur from time to time. People have become accustomed to it and even treat it as a leisure program, just like the fighting that is happening on Tonlu Street at this time. Looking at those fake fights, most people come to watch with a monkey-like attitude, occasionally emitting sarcastic laughter and encouraging cheers. And just as everyone was watching with great interest, suddenly a normal person joined in this ridiculous fight, causing everyone to not react for a moment. Li Feng didn't react either. When he saw a man dressed in expensive clothes punch Mori to the ground, he suddenly froze. This is not scientific. This idea had not yet fully circulated in my mind, and the tall beggar who had been pretending to fight with Li Feng was also knocked down by another man with a punch. The man was ruthless in his actions, and when he punched the beggar on the head, he could clearly hear a sound of bones breaking. Now Li Feng regained his composure and didn't look to see what had happened. He turned around and ran away. Are you still waiting to be beaten to death? Unfortunately, after only a few steps, Li Feng was caught up by the man and hit him hard on the back. Ah! Li Feng felt a severe pain coming from behind, and then he flew out like a shell, hitting the hard slate ground and rolling up and down several times before stopping. The clothes that had already turned into strips of cloth suddenly turned into rags, scattered all over the ground, with only a few scattered pieces of fabric still hanging on Li Feng's body. Ah! Li Feng, who fell to the ground, still howled in sorrow, unable to bear the pain from his back, as if someone had cut his body in half with a knife. On the other hand, the other beggars are not doing well either. During the moment when Li Feng was flying in the air, both Mori's side and the Well's side were lying down, and the rest had already run away in the face of the situation. After cleaning up the beggars, the two men dressed in expensive clothes calmly turned around and bowed to report to a handsome man with blonde hair and blue eyes in the crowd. The man was wearing a dark red aristocratic robe and was holding a silk cloth to cover his nose. Looking at the beggar on the ground, he furrowed his brow slightly. Li Feng wailed in pain, his eyes red, tears constantly streaming from his eyes, and his entire face pale and terrifying. At the end of the day, Li Feng was just an ordinary college student before his time traveling. Even if he became a beggar after his time traveling, he didn't actually suffer too much. After all, being a beggar was only a short 10 days, and he himself was a relatively adaptable person to the environment. Especially after joining Mori's subordinates, this gang leader is basically responsible for everything. He has never encountered such a situation today before. He glanced at the nobleman and immediately recognized him. This young master is the guy who beat the beggar who begged him to death last time in front of him. Although he realized who this young master was, in the blink of an eye he twisted his body again due to the unbearable pain, leaving no time to pay attention. The nobleman frowned at the wailing on the ground, seeming to find it very noisy, so he said something to the two servants who had just started fighting. I saw those two people nod and walk back into the field, one after another, attacking the beggar again. This time it was really a desperate move, and with just one click, the beggar, who had been wailing all along, was silent. The crowd that was originally watching has already dispersed, and even the bold ones have retreated far away to avoid being affected. Li Feng was the last one. When he saw the plight of other beggars, he immediately bit his lips tightly without making a sound. He couldn't bear to cry out in pain and was suppressed into low moans. But even so, we still haven't escaped this reckless disaster. The person walked expressionlessly to Li Feng, just about to take action, but suddenly stopped. He looked up and down from a high position and suddenly said, "Are you Han?" Upon hearing this, Li Feng lifted his head and found that the thug was actually a person with black hair, black pupils, and yellow skin. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and his originally cold gaze now carried a hint of surprise. Although I don't know why there is also the term Han in this world, in this situation, why bother so much? When Li Feng heard that person's words, he quickly nodded like pounding garlic. I am also Han Chinese. But I'm sorry, my employer has already given the order, the person explained in a low voice, and before Li Feng could speak again, a punch hit him. After another intense pain, Li Feng's eyes darkened and he lost consciousness. When Li Feng regained consciousness, the first thing he noticed was a foul odor. Even if he had adapted slightly because of being a beggar, he couldn't bear it at all. Opening your eyes, the first thing that catches your eye is the deep blue sky and dazzling stars. Li Feng wanted to sit up, but as soon as he moved, he realized he had lost consciousness in his lower body. That was a strange feeling, as if only half of the body was there. After trying several times, there was no result, and in the end, I had to give up. I reluctantly turned my neck to look around, but as soon as I turned my head, I was startled by Mori's terrifying head. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Using the system to activate cemetery forces. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking under the bright moonlight, Mori's head had already deformed, half as if it had been fiercely squeezed by a heavy object, completely deflated. His eyes were hanging outside his orbit with nerves attached, and the other side was also covered in blood. Around Mori, there were flies dancing up and down, buzzing incessantly. Looking around, Li Feng lay on top of the body, with the bodies of beggars all around him. Even further away, there are small mountains made up of garbage piles, and you can vaguely see that wild dogs and other animals have started to feed on the outermost corpses. Having understood his current situation, Li Feng turned his head and stared blankly at the towering moon, his upper lips tightly pursing his lower lips, tears silently streaming out of his eyes. I'll fuck. I'll fuck. I'll fuck. I'll fuck. I'll fuck. 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 Suddenly, Li Feng burst out and loudly vented his inner anger towards the sky. I'll fuck Nima. If you don't let me live, then I'll let you die. Finally, Li Feng's face turned red and his ears turned red, his veins bulging as he shouted these words into the sky. Although he has become a beggar, he has never complained to anyone. After all, after arriving in this world, he has no skills, no money, and no job. If he doesn't want to starve to death, he can only become a beggar. In his view, the future is still long, but for now, he can ensure that he does not starve to death, and the rest can be planned slowly. Li Feng is usually quite open-minded, and he is also quite adaptable to the environment. At the beginning of the journey, one's mindset was very positive. But today this incident left him completely furious, as if something was about to burst out of his chest. Li Feng was very clear about what was condensing inside his chest and constantly churning. That's anger, it's unwillingness, it's resentment. They gathered together and whispered revenge in Li Yun's ear. They must seek revenge. After shouting, he gasped for breath and withdrew his gaze. The system absorbs the soul, Li Feng gritted his teeth and said. Discovering free souls, start absorbing according to player instructions. A cold electronic sound rang in Li Feng's ear, a sound that only he could hear. With the sound of electronic music, more than 10 beggar corpses around suddenly emitted glowing white light balls, which seemed to be attracted and slowly drifted towards Li Feng before disappearing into his body. Obtain 14 souls with energy that meets the minimum standard for activating the hero's Invincible Cemetery faction. Ask the player if they want to activate it. Open. Activate the Tomb Garden faction, players will be forced to convert to undead life. Confirm again whether to activate it. This is the reason why Li Feng has been unwilling to use this system. After activating the Tomb Garden faction, he will be forcibly transformed into a undead. In his opinion, this is simply not worth the loss. He doesn't have a grand dream of becoming a king, he just wants to live an ordinary life. In addition, the world is actually ruled by the religion of the light system, almost crazily hostile to all dark forces and life. Li Feng knew that he had this system not long ago, it was after becoming a beggar. Although he hasn't been in this world for long, he has a basic understanding of it because he actively seeks to learn about it. After realizing that there was a mandatory consequence of opening up the cemetery power, he gave up. But now facing the desperate situation in front of him, he has no other choice. Confirm activation. Authorized by the player, officially activate the Tomb Garden faction. At the same time as the electronic sound started, Li Feng felt a sudden light in front of him, and a few seconds later, his eyes were filled with a white glow. A crackling sound emanated from the completely paralyzed body, and the exposed body began to twist irregularly, with occasional bumps and indentations beneath the yellow skin. Li Feng felt as if countless things had been stuffed into his mind in the blink of an eye, causing a headache that was about to crack. I want to make a sound, but I can't control even a small muscle. As the renovation began, the space near Li Feng began to exude an eerie atmosphere and rapidly expanded outward. The wild dog, which was originally gnawing on the corpse, was instantly enveloped by this aura, and then its body quickly withered as if it had been sucked by something. With the passage of time, Li Feng's body went through multiple cycles from withering to swelling, and then from swelling to withering, and finally gradually calmed down. Not long after, Li Feng's consciousness returned to his body. He lay on the corpse, enjoying the joy of regaining control of his body, and even couldn't help but shed tears. People who have not experienced it cannot appreciate the terror of losing control over their bodies. The Tomb Garden faction has been activated and the player has completed the conversion. Now proceed to the next step. Please select the hero template as the player's initial template. The electronic sound of the system ignored Li Feng, who was still immersed in joy, and rang out directly. A blue background screen appeared in front of Li Feng, featuring the hero avatar and explanation of the hero Invincible Cemetery faction. Li Feng was surprised to be able to choose a hero template, which brought excitement. His gaze quickly scanned back and forth on the screen. In fact, the hero said more or less, and soon he finished reading. Looking at the hero's abilities written on the screen, introduction. After pondering for a while, he slowly spoke up and said, "Choose Vladimir. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. The Ring of Light. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Vladimir template has been generated. Players are advised to check the relevant information on their own. Li Feng heard the sound of the system and immediately prepared to open his character bar. But his gaze suddenly caught the attention of a group of people and horses rushing towards him in the distance. Because the body has been completely transformed into an undead, all aspects have been greatly enhanced. Looking from afar, coupled with the extremely bright moonlight today, it is very easy to see the composition of that team clearly. These people were all wearing silver white half-body armor, with a gold-edged red robe underneath the armor and a cross pattern embroidered with gold thread on the robe. One of the knights held a red flag, with a circular ring on the flag and a shining cross in the ring. With a glance, the person at the forefront of the team caught Li Feng's attention. That was a woman with long golden hair as gorgeous as silk, with a beautiful appearance. The moonlight shone on her body, adding a touch of psychedelic color to her. Li Feng was immediately startled when he saw the woman. Hurriedly lowering his body, he hurriedly ran down the pile of corpses. That woman Li Feng is aware of it, and has even seen it a few times during begging. She is the Knight Chief of the Holy Court in the Eagle Leading Region, in charge of all the armed forces of the Holy Court in the Eagle Leading Region, known as Lena Morbat, the Valkyrie of the Eagle Leading Region. No matter why they run here in the middle of the night, even if they come here to meet their lover, it's not Li Feng's business. As a dead life with a dark future, oiling the soles of their feet is the most correct choice in this situation. Fortunately, his current body is countless times better than Li Feng's previous one. After running down the pile of corpses, he took a step and ran wildly all the way. In no time, his figure completely disappeared into the night, disappearing without a trace. Let's not worry about Li Feng, who runs away naked in the night like a pervert, and turn his gaze back to this holy court team. A team of 15 led by Lena Malbart rode to the foot of the garbage mountain shortly after Li Feng left. Darnell, you take your people to raise the ring of light to detect the traces of evil spirits, while others' weapons are unsheathed, remain vigilant. Before the horse could stop, the Valkyrie had already jumped off the horse cleanly, with a fair and beautiful face that was not serious about smiling. Her right hand had already been pressed on the hilt of the sword and given orders. The reason Lena led the team to leave overnight was because the detector placed in the church suddenly produced a strong reaction, indicating that someone nearby was using negative energy or that something evil had appeared. When negative energy is at its peak, even Lena can feel that dark aura. Sir, the ring of light is responding. A middle-aged man with a beard and a book in hand walked up to Lena and reported. He pointed in the direction of the pile of corpses and said, "Over there. Everyone disperse, surround." Lena suddenly drew out her sword, giving orders and walking towards the direction of the pile of corpses. Everyone cautiously crossed the garbage mountain, becoming even more guarded when they saw the pile of corpses made up of beggars. Within this range, they could clearly feel the remnants of that evil force. It's undead magic. Lena made such a judgment with a stern expression on her face. As he spoke, he couldn't help but tighten his long sword in his hand. A necromancer who could produce such great movement was definitely not easy to deal with. Fortunately, they are just the vanguard troops, and there is support afterwards. Just procrastinate and you'll be fine. As they approached the pile of corpses, Lena had noticed that all the corpses were dry and her body was completely flattened, and there were obvious negative energy remnants felt from these dry corpses. But apart from these corpses and the foul-smelling garbage, there is nothing else. Darnell. Lena whispered, and the middle-aged pastor with a beard behind her immediately opened the book in her hand, reciting words. A few seconds later, with Daniel as the center, ripples of bright white light continued to spread outward, like ripples in the water. Sir, apart from these dry corpses, no trace of negative energy has been found. A few minutes later, the priest put away the spell and said to Lena. Everyone search separately. Lena frowned and ordered with a serious expression. The others immediately dispersed, and there was no need for Lena to explain too much. They all knew what to do next. The knights and priests who followed Lena as the vanguard this time are old partners. Just as the knights of the Holy Court were dispersing their search, Li Feng had already run outside the walls of the Eagle territory. He swayed naked near the city walls south of Eagle's Collar. The garbage dump is actually only a few miles away from Eagle's Collar, not too far. However, at this point, the Eagle leader had already closed the city gate, and the defenders on the city wall had strengthened their guard due to the warning from the Holy Court. Teams of soldiers, fully armed, patrolled back and forth. Li Feng had no extravagance in hoping to enter through the city gate. He swayed his bare body and silently touched the edge of the city wall. There happened to be a very hidden sewage outlet there, but unfortunately it had already been sealed off by a fist-sized iron fence. Hee. Li Feng saw the sewage outlet and chuckled softly. Reaching out his hand to grab the iron fence, he cleverly twisted it slightly towards a certain angle and heard a light click, and the iron fence was taken down. This sewage outlet was told to him by Mori, and no one would have thought that Mori also discovered it by chance. Just twist the iron fence at a specific angle to easily remove it. Without hesitation, Li Feng rushed into the sewage outlet with his cat on, and then refixed the iron fence. From beginning to end, the soldiers on the city wall did not notice any abnormalities here, and they never dreamed that their defensive targets would enter the city like this. After entering the sewer through the sewage outlet, Li Feng finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although the environment of the sewer is very poor, with various indescribable garbage and foul-smelling sewage, it can still be considered safe in the end. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. The Sea of the Undead is the romance of the Undead Mage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After relaxing, Li Feng immediately opened his character panel. This is something he needs to establish himself in the future and must be clarified as soon as possible. The data displayed on the character panel is generally similar to Vladimir's initial attributes, and the hero attributes of heroes Invincible are divided into attack, defense, strength, and knowledge. Attack and defense are mainly reflected in the types of troops carried by heroes, which inevitably attack the skeleton soldiers of 1. If the hero's attack is 2 points, then the skeleton soldiers will exhibit an attack of 1 plus 2, which is 3 points of attack power, and defense is the same. And power and knowledge affect the hero itself. Power affects the power of hero magic, and knowledge affects the magic value of the hero. Because Li Feng chose Vladimir, the initial attributes are attack 0, defense 1, strength 3, and knowledge 1. The innate ability is a reanimator, and the initial 3 skills are basic undead magic, basic summoning magic, and life master. Vladimir's talent as a hero follows the path of the Dead Sea. It is precisely for this reason that Li Feng chose this hero. After all, reality is not a game, and elite routes that encounter crowded tactics are basically a waste. In addition, the bone dragon of the top army in the cemetery is really not awesome, so Li Feng chose the route of the Dead Sea at the beginning. The Undead Sea is the romance of the Undead Mage. A sentence came to Li Feng's mind. After reading the basic attributes and skills, Li Feng continued to look at the units in the unit column. 5 skeleton soldiers, 2 zombies. There is also a button with the words "Summon" written next to the icons of skeleton soldiers and zombies. This is not scientific. In the game, Vladimir takes 20 skeleton soldiers and more than 10 zombies with him. Li Feng looked at the scattered soldiers on the branch column and said somewhat dejectedly. The system did not respond to Li Feng's complaint and had no choice but to accept it. At least there are still soldiers to lead. Li Feng comforted himself like this and then shifted his attention to the summoning button. This can't be the button that summons the troops. As soon as he thought of it, Li Feng directly pressed the summoning button with his hand. Suddenly, 5 armored skeleton racks appeared in a not too spacious sewer with just 1 swipe. These are Li Feng's skeleton soldiers. They are far from as cute as in the game. The skeleton, devoid of flesh and blood, was adorned with rusty and tattered armor, wielding an axe in one hand and a shield in the other. The hollow eye sockets flickered with fluorescent green light. These skeletons vary in height, but their appearance is extremely penetrating. Li Feng looked at them a few times before taking them back, but even so, his face couldn't help but look ugly. After retrieving the skeleton soldier, Li Feng did not intend to witness the zombie's unattractive appearance in the game, so he directly closed the character panel and opened the town panel instead. See if we can build a building. But at first glance, his face immediately turned black. How come there's not even a village hall? On the town panel, there was only a vast expanse of tombstones, and nothing else. All the buildings in the building list are gray and nothing can be built. Li Feng tried clicking on the icon in the village hall, and immediately a system prompt popped up. Building a village hall requires 100 souls or 5,000 game coins. Holy crap! Seeing this damn system prompt, Li Feng didn't calm down. If it was in a frontier war zone, the conditions would naturally be relaxed, but he was in a very peaceful coastal city called Xiongyin, which allowed him to obtain 100 souls from somewhere. As for 5,000 gold coins, it looks quite easy, but there is also a prefix before the coins. Game. Gold coins are easy, but where do game coins come from? Li Feng felt something blocking his chest and was extremely depressed. Don't make such a fool of yourself. I used to think that as long as I decided to use my golden finger, I would naturally soar to the sky and live a happy life with a cute face, but now I can see that I can't eat it. The desolate territory and a dazzling array of buildings on the architectural fence made Li Feng feel uncomfortable but helpless. Da-da-da-da-da, a rhythmic sound of footsteps suddenly rang out from the originally quiet sewer, waking up Li Feng, who was pondering deeply. He regained his senses and perked up his ears, holding his breath and listening quietly. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and Li Feng was ready to release his skeleton soldiers. But the footsteps stopped not far from him. Then there was the hissing and clanging sound of opening the fabric. After a while, the commotion subsided. "Well, there's no problem with the goods," a man's hoarse voice came in. "This place is quite safe, and I don't know how that old man Mori discovered it." This was the voice of another man. "If you want to know, just go ask him, hee. Get out of here. That old thing has already died. Ask him." "Why don't you go ask?" Li Feng quietly hid aside, listening attentively to the conversation of these unwelcome guests, hoping that they would leave soon. But he didn't notice that a few fat mice had gathered around him at some point. One of them sniffed Li Feng and then took a hard bite on his thigh. The sudden attack startled Li Feng, and at the same time, his body moved and made a considerable noise. Who's there?" The two of them were chatting and immediately started shouting loudly. "Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Summoning Zombies, Negative Energy Ball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As early as when those two people mentioned Mori, Li Feng knew that these people were from Jack's gang. The news about this place was casually spoken by Mori when he asked him why he was able to double the protection fee to 90%. At that time, Mori was also very happy and didn't pay attention to leaking his words. He also reminded Li Feng not to speak out, otherwise the Jack gang would leave them dead without a burial ground. From the current situation, the Jack gang has used this place as a place to hide and smuggle goods. So when the members of the Jack gang discovered Li Feng, he understood that this matter could not be good. In order to keep the secret here, the Jack gang wanted to kill 9 out of 10 people and silence them. It's better to start first than to suffer later. Having made up his mind, Li Feng directly released 5 skeletons and then manipulated them to rush out of their hiding place. "What are you?" "There are undead spirits." On the main sewer passage not far from the hiding point, 4 men wearing linen clothes stood. One by one, they were big and thick, with big arms and round waist, and fierce and evil spirits. After Li Feng made a sound, they had already held their weapons in their hands, with both machetes and long swords. They first saw someone rushing out of the branch road and immediately raised their knife to charge forward. But he didn't take a few steps, and when he saw that there was a green flame in his eyes, and the skeleton was white and miserable, he was immediately scared out of his wits. Li Feng also saw through the visual sharing of the skeleton that his opponent was 4 fierce men, and immediately summoned the zombies without hesitation. Skull soldiers wear armor and hold axes, looking very imposing. But it's just an ordinary person. As for their combat effectiveness, Li Feng has no idea. Those 4 Jack helpers all know that their physique and skills are better than ordinary people. It is estimated that it is much higher than the farmers in Heroes of Might and Magic 5, and the lowest is similar to the militia, possibly even higher. It's just a skeleton. Don't be afraid. The 4 people who were originally panicked suddenly calmed down after figuring out that the person in front of them was a skeleton soldier. One of them shouted loudly and rushed forward, while the others heard his words and became bold. Even if they wanted to run at this moment, they couldn't run, they were only separated by a few steps. If they were careful and thoughtful at this moment, they would surely understand that the sudden appearance of the skeleton in this secret warehouse is very abnormal, and there is a possibility of a necromancer nearby, which is not low. But the situation at this time is that there is not much distance between the enemy and us. With just one breath, we can face each other, and we cannot tolerate them to think carefully. If we don't want to die, we can only go up. The skeleton soldiers were also as fragile as Li Feng had anticipated, and the 4 gang members took out 3 skeleton soldiers with their swords. However, they themselves were not good either. Li Feng directly instructed the 5 skeleton soldiers to gather fire on one person. 3 of them were abandoned on my side, and 1 on the other side immediately lay down. Before the remaining 3 gang members could launch the next wave of attacks, 2 thick-backed machetes suddenly appeared in the oblique stab, directly knocking down 1 gang member close to Li Feng's hiding place. The sudden change immediately frightened the remaining 2 people and they quickly took a few steps back. After seeing the zombies slowly emerging from the shadows, their faces turned pale like paper. The zombies' appearance was really terrifying. Even when Li Feng saw the live version of the zombie, he was stunned for several seconds. If he hadn't known the current situation was critical, he would have wanted to retrieve the 2 zombies on the spot. I saw 2 zombies, one tall and one short, with green skin and constantly emitting a foul odor even worse than sewage. His face was grim yet stiff, like a fool, with his mouth wide open. The unknown liquid, whether it was corpse water or saliva, hung on his yellow teeth one by one. One of the zombies had a large opening in their round belly, and their intestines protruded from the opening, all the way down to the ground. Every step, the green intestines drag on the ground. 2 feet, one is folded, and because of this, they can't walk fast. It can only be rubbed bit by bit. The 2 members of the gang who were still standing no longer hesitated at this moment, threw the sharp weapon in their hands, turned around and ran away briskly. Run to your brother. In law. Li Feng became anxious when he saw the situation. Whether it was a skeleton soldier or a zombie, Nima was born with short legs and couldn't run fast. At least the speed of those 2 groups couldn't catch up. Now Li Feng was no longer hiding and quickly ran out. Watching the 2 groups of people who had already run several tens of meters, he ordered the skeleton soldiers and zombies to chase after him while raising his hand to shoot a green and eerie negative energy ball. The negative energy ball is not strong at all, it can be considered a common attack method for undead mages, and its power depends on the hero's own attributes. However, Li Feng's strength is at least 3 points, and he can more or less start using it. Just in the blink of an eye, the negative energy ball caught up with a gang member and directly hit his foot. This was intentional by Li Feng. The negative energy ball was not strong, so he chose to attack his thigh. The reason why you can shoot so accurately the first time is because the negative energy ball is treated as a skill and listed in the skill bar. Li Feng just needs to select the target and use the skills. The rest will be calibrated by the system itself. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Exorcism of the Dead. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The gang member suffered such a blow and suddenly fell on the ground with a big somersault. After he fell to the ground, he tried several times to stand up but failed, and the skeleton soldiers had already caught up and cut him to death with their swords. After finishing this, the 2 skeleton soldiers were preparing to continue their efforts with blood-stained axes, only to find that the other had already run several tens of meters. If it weren't for the night vision brought by the undead, they would not have seen the figures of the gang members hidden in the pitch-black sewer. Li Feng immediately set aside the skeleton soldiers and zombies, and chased after them with his own physical advantage. He really wants to throw another negative energy ball, but that thing requires cooldown time. Looking at the cooldown time on the skill bar, he was so anxious that he just wanted to curse. Li Feng, who was running wildly, was even faster than the fleeing gang members, and in a few strokes, they shortened the distance between each other. At this point, the cooling time of the negative energy ball also improved, and without hesitation, Li Feng threw a green ball again. In the blink of an eye, the green ball hit the leg of the gang member, as they were suddenly hit by such a force while running at high speed. The gang member threw a few meters into the air before stopping. His body and face were covered in black garbage and foul-smelling sewage. He wanted to stand up, but found that his calf and stomach were like being splashed with concentrated sulfuric acid. The flesh and blood in the area hit by the negative energy ball were corroded at a visible speed, and the blood-stained bones could be seen directly. Perhaps the protective mechanism of the body was in effect, and this gang member did not feel any pain. But instead, he lifted his head and watched in horror as a naked man walked towards him step by step. The man has black pupils, black hair, and yellow skin. He is about 1.7 meters tall and his appearance is neither handsome nor ugly. He has a strong physique, looks thin, but his muscles are very well proportioned. No, don't kill me. The gang members who were lying on the ground looked at Li Feng getting closer and closer, their faces showing a body of fear. He grabbed the uneven ground with both hands and struggled to crawl on the ground. But in the end, I still didn't walk fast. Li Feng didn't care about his naked body being scrutinized. If it were a girl, he might even be a little shy. But it doesn't matter if we're both men. As he approached the gang members, Li Feng casually threw another negative energy ball into their hands to prevent them from taking the opportunity to counterattack. This attack, the group finally felt unbearable pain, and he fell to the ground writhing his body in pain. He let out a heart-wrenching wail in his mouth, just like Li Feng from the beginning. It is strange that Li Feng felt a certain pleasure from the pain of this gang member, a wonderful feeling of controlling the life and death of others, and even wanted to throw another negative energy ball. However, as soon as this emotion surfaced in his heart, he immediately realized it. At least I studied psychology in college, so I need to be more sensitive in this area. This is not scientific. I am such a kind person, how could I have such thoughts? Li Feng ignored the howling gang members and began to reflect, dragging his chin. The idea of controlling someone else's life or something, after an ordinary person gains unimaginable power, does arise, so Li Feng doesn't care much. On the contrary, the idea of wanting to throw another ball and torture the enemy in front of him later made him alert. After pondering for a while, he realized that it might be due to the negative effects of transforming into undead life. After all, the power required for transformation comes from negative energy, so it is not difficult to understand some negative emotions. Pay more attention in the future. After thinking it through, Li Feng temporarily put the question aside and prepared to interrogate the gang members in front of him, but found that he had fainted due to excessive pain. At this point, the lagging skeleton soldiers had already arrived, while the zombies were still slowly rubbing against each other halfway. Command the skeleton soldiers to stand up the gang members, then turn around and walk towards the previous location. At this moment, only the sound of bones rubbing against each other as the skeleton soldiers walked echoed in the pitch-black sewer. Perhaps it was because there was too much noise in the fight just now, and even the mice disappeared without a trace. Returning to the location of the previous battle, there were only scattered white bones and 2 corpses that were bleeding. Blood flowed out of the warm corpses and mixed into the sewage system. The smell of blood mixed with the stench that permeates the air makes one feel suffocated. Without saying a word, Li Feng raised his hand and released the summoning level 2 magic to drive away the raided spirit. A green light shot out from Li Feng's hand and split into 3 parts in mid-air, shining on the 3 dismantled skeleton soldiers. Immediately after, the scattered bones, armor, and axes were picked up by invisible hands, and then, like building blocks, the mixed bones were reassembled into 3 skeleton soldiers. Raise Dead is one of the signature skills of undead mages, which is used to resurrect friendly soldiers. The primitive drive Undead can restore 120 plus, 15x strength, points of health. And the life of the skeleton soldiers is only 4 points, and resurrecting 3 skeleton soldiers is more than enough. However, this skill also has flaws. Only resurrected soldiers of the undead type can truly resurrect, while other types of life can only be temporarily resurrected, and they will die again after the battle ends. Looking at the returning skeleton soldiers, Li Feng happily woke up the unconscious gang members. Are you helped by Jack? Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. The Cathedral of Light and the Blasphemer. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The St. Totnev Cathedral is a typical cliff-style building, with a wide-pointed atrium and towering spires on both sides. The eaves and spires are covered with religious and mythological figures, and the overall color is mainly red with gold as a supplement. The main atrium of the church is adorned with interlocking tall arches, and each wall is meticulously depicted with beautiful religious-themed murals. This cathedral, located in the core area of the Eagle Ring, is hailed by the world as the pearl of the heroic empire and a masterpiece of cliff-style architecture. When the Valkyrie of the Eagle Ring, Knight Lena Malbart, returned to the Eagle Ring with her tired subordinates, the first ray of dawn had already shone into the Basilica of St. Totnev. When Lena led her team back to the St. Totnev Cathedral, it happened to be the beginning of morning prayers. She handed the reins to the groom and let her subordinates rest before leading her deputy Daniel straight through the side door into the cathedral. Through the magnificent corridor, she quietly arrived at the Holy Light Hall where morning prayers were taking place. At this moment, the hall was already filled with monks wearing red coarse cloth robes. They sat on long benches, carefully listening to an elderly man at the forefront of the hall, wearing a red crown hat, a red robe, and gray hair, reciting a prayer. The old man placed his hands on the meticulously carved podium and looked lovingly at the monks and priests below. He saw Lena quietly entering through the small door, nodded slightly, and then continued reciting prayers and explaining the content of the scriptures. Lena and Nadal sat down in the last row, clasping their hands together, bowing their heads and closing their eyes, and beginning their morning prayers. In the quiet Holy Light Hall, only the old man, although old, had a strong and powerful voice. The bright sunlight cast a colorful halo through the stained glass painted with religious figures in the hall, coating him with sacred colors. As the morning prayer came to an end with the last sentence, "The Lord is with me," the monks stood up and left one after another. In no time, only the old man, Lena, and Nadal remained in the Hall of Holy Light. "The Lord is with me." Lena and Needle walked up to the old man and respectfully bowed their heads. "The Lord is with me." The old man smiled kindly and said, "My child, I believe the search results are not ideal. To report to the Archbishop, as you expected, we searched all night but did not find the enemy. However, it is preliminarily determined that the enemy is a blasphemer who manipulates the undead." Lena had a handsome face and a stern tone. The old man was the head of St. Totnev Cathedral, Archbishop Julius Gunther, a legendary pastor from a commoner background. The undead wizards. Julius paused upon hearing Lena's words and looked quite surprised. "The undead wizards have disappeared for hundreds of years, and I thought they had completely cut off their lineage. Lena, what do you suggest?" "Archbishop, based on current clues, this blasphemer has not left the Eagle territory area. However, considering the difficulty of finding the blasphemer among hundreds of thousands of people, I believe it is necessary to strengthen patrols, send more personnel to continue the search, and set up rings of light in various transportation arteries and cities. We must not let the blasphemer do anything wrong." Lena heard Julius' inquiry and blurted out the plan, obviously having already prepared the plan. After searching for no results in the garbage mountain last night, she immediately dispatched personnel to set up various main roads in the Eagle's leadership. Whenever anyone passed by, she threw evil detection directly, but did not find any trace of Li Feng all night. This can be used to determine that the undead wizard has not yet left the territory of the Eagle realm, and may even be hiding in the Eagle realm. The detectors inside the cathedral can only detect large dot-scale negative energy fluctuations, but there are distance limitations for detecting small negative energy fluctuations, and can only cover the St. Etienne Cathedral and several nearby blocks. So Lina felt quite tricky about this, with hundreds of thousands of residents living in the Eagle territory and undead wizards mixing into the crowd. As long as she didn't come near the cathedral to seek death, there were very few methods she could take. Archbishop Julius also understood the difficulties involved and agreed with Lina's suggestion. Such scattered soldiers are not scary, but they are very troublesome. It is impossible to blockade the entire Eagle territory and conduct a carpet-style search for this. Leaving aside the cost of manpower and resources, this proposal alone cannot be approved by the Lord. As a commercial city, the blockade of the area in Xiongyiling means losing tens of thousands of gold coins daily. The Lord will not agree or accept. Apart from this method, only preventive measures can be taken. That is, the plan proposed by Lina. Well, I understand. Let's follow your proposal and I'll write to Lord Adele, asking him to let the city defense army cooperate with us. Julius' old face also showed a hint of bitterness, as a necromancer lurked in his parish, like an untimely bomb that could explode at some point, so he couldn't help but worry. Please rest assured, Archbishop, that I will uncover the blasphemer before it causes any damage, Lina said with a solemn expression and resolute determination. The hands hanging on both sides instinctively clenched into fists. My enemies are strong and fierce, and there are many who hate me for no reason. Those who repay me with resentment are against me, because I will walk the path of righteousness. This is the test that the Lord has given us, and we must face it bravely. The Lord is with us. Julius placed his right hand on his chest and softly read out the verses from the scriptures to inspire Lina and Darnell. The Lord is with me, Lina and Needle responded with their right hands caressing their hearts and bowing their heads. Meanwhile, what is the blasphemer in the mouth of the Valkyrie doing? Cluck. The sewer cover in a secluded alley in the southern urban area of Xiongyin was suddenly lifted, and then a young man, completely naked, crawled out of the open sewer. Who else could it be, not the blasphemer Li Feng? It can be considered as coming out. Li Feng crawled out of the sewer, smelling the fresh air, and his face showed intoxication. After dealing with the Jack gang members and washing up the goods hidden there, he left. But after searching for a long time, he couldn't find the remote exit and wandered from late at night until morning. After leaving the sewer, Li Feng's first problem was to find clothes. The 4 members of the gang had clothes, but they were all stained with blood, which was too eye-catching, so he did not take them. Li Feng stood up and looked around, with a smile on his face. Clothes were drying outside the house next to the alley. Although it looked quite old, it could still cover his body. Without saying a word, he climbed over the wall between the alley and the room and jumped into the small courtyard outside. Walking to the clothes hanging on the clothesline, Li Feng took them off and prepared to leave. He changed into Xuanlai's clothes. The first thing to consider next is revenge. He asked the previous Jack gang members about the identity of the young nobleman who had instructed his subordinates to paralyze him. The noble prince is the son of the Lord of the Eagle Lord, Abnazil Urutna. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Undead Witchcraft. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Abanazil Yel Utner was the second son of the Eagle Lord, the Marquis of Adalzil Yel Utner. Compared to his brother Gerald's mature and disciplined demeanor, this second son was truly a playboy. I spend the whole day wandering in brothels and dances, but I am ignorant and often hold various salons, from music to art, from hunting to wine tasting. As a result, he was jokingly referred to as the little baron of the salon. Although Li Feng didn't see Ebner himself until yesterday, the title of Salon Little Baron was resounding in his ears. It is not an exaggeration to say that although this second young master is uneducated and elegant, his high-profile behavior and noble status have led other nobles and scholars to flock to the various salons he organizes. Being able to participate in Abner's salon has become a symbol of status in the upper echelons of the Eagle leadership circle, and upon coming out of it, both artists and scholars immediately doubled in value. From a certain perspective, Abner has actually succeeded. Whenever Abner hosts a salon, the entire Eagle squad is a sensation, even the lower class know it, and it becomes a topic of discussion in their spare time. So it's really difficult to make a living under the Eagle's leadership. I wonder if this salon lord is really difficult. Li Feng, apart from being surprised, did not give up his revenge plan for the enemy with such identity. He is usually a person with a good temper, but his temper doesn't necessarily mean he is easy to bully. The anger of a commoner can even be bloody, let alone a life and death feud. In addition, he has a stubborn temper, and even if he hits the south wall, he will never turn back. So although I felt that the difficulty of revenge increased, I did not give up despite the difficulties. Firstly, I don't have much power at hand, with 6 skeleton soldiers and 2 zombies. I guess I can't even pass the guard level. Moreover, the current situation is not good, and there are knights from the Holy Court everywhere. Li Feng sat in a small corner by the street, looking down to analyze the situation. He can still bully ordinary people with his power, but if he wants to assassinate Abner with these soldiers, he is completely looking for death. Although he has ulterior motives, the possibility of success is infinitely close to zero. After all, being able to become Abner's guard will definitely not be inferior in skill, and having fighting spirit is definitely the lowest standard. And the guy with fighting spirit, according to Li Feng's own understanding, is at least the standard of a second-level soldier. As for the extra skull, it was resurrected from the 4 Jack gang members after killing them. This is the flagship skill of the cemetery faction. Necromancy, which is the fundamental skill of all undead mages. The effect is to allow the hero to automatically convert a portion of the enemy's fallen troops to undead based on the proportion of their health points after winning the battle, because Li Feng's skill is only a basic level, which can only drive 20% of the fallen enemies. Fortunately, the 4 members of the Jack gang had good qualities, equivalent to militia, so they successfully drove out a skeleton soldier. If there is no way to increase his own strength in a short period of time, then he can only start from other aspects. Li Feng touched his chin and focused on thinking for most of the day. When the sun was setting in the west and it was almost afternoon, a smile appeared on his face. Obviously, after careful consideration, he had come up with a solution. Fortunately, those guys still have some money, I don't know if it's enough. Li Feng stood up, stretched lazily, and determined his next plan. Forget it, go get some more. He now has a silver coin, 10 shillings and 8 pence, all of which were found on those gang members. But because I am not clear about the price of the item I want to buy, I have some concerns. Li Feng is located in a remote corner of Dodekeo Street, and after walking out, it becomes a bustling street. This is a commercial street, with shops and street stalls ranging from selling daily necessities to luxury goods. There are many pedestrians who appear to be wealthy and absolutely fat sheep. Due to the fact that the indigenous people in this world generally have much higher physical fitness than the people on Earth, Li Feng initially wanted to become a thief but was powerless. With his fragile body and clumsy skills, if caught, it would be the rhythm of death on the streets. But now Li Feng is no longer the same as Wu Xia among of that day. After selecting a target on the street, just as he passed by, the other person's wallet had unknowingly entered his arms. Before he could show his proud smile, a priest in a red robe adorned with gold borders walked towards him. The pastor looked around, searching for suspicious characters. Li Feng restrained his expression, changed to a devout expression, then stopped and bowed to the red-robed pastor with his hands clasped together, saying, "The Lord is with me. The Lord is with me." The pastor heard Li Feng's greeting and smiled kindly. His right hand crossed his chest and bowed back to Li Feng, then continued his patrol. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.